Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Enhancing Parks and Recreation Compliance with GIS. It's part of the Connect Me Asset Mapping event series, GIS and AI for Local Government Compliance Reporting and Asset Management. My name is Michael Dennis, and I'm a geodesist at NOAA's National Geodetic Survey. In case you don't know, NGS is responsible for defining, maintaining, and providing access to the National Spatial Reference System, the NSRS. That's essentially the system of datums and map projections that serves as the basis for civilian surveying and mapping in the United States. GIS would scarcely be possible without the NSRS. But my job today is to moderate this event and host the Q&A portion later in the webinar after the presentations. Now, before we get started, let's run a quick poll of the audience, of all of you, to find out where you're from and what sectors you work in. The poll will pop up on your screen, I think it already has, and just fill it out and then submit. Now, while you're working on the poll, I want to mention that we intend for this to be an interactive event. For that to occur, you enter your questions in the Q&A space that's located down at the bottom of your screen. There's no need to raise your hand, just post all the questions in the Q&A space. Me and the presenters will respond to all the questions at the end of all the presentations in a panel discussion session. And also, we'll have other polls come up during the session and make sure to participate in those as well. For information about speakers and to see the event agenda, click the Resources tab at the bottom of your screen. We also have shared some useful links in the Resources section, which you can access at any time. This session is being recorded and will be available for download on demand after the event. You'll receive an email notifying you when the recording is available. Now, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our webinar series sponsors, Carasoft and Bad Elf, for making this education opportunity available, and Samsara for sponsoring this session. In addition to myself serving as an MC, today's featured speakers are Jenna Leveille, Nick Smolovsky, Marcus Mueller, and Bryce Bullock, and you'll be hearing from each of them as we go through the presentations. And while waiting for the poll, let me give you a brief overview of the session. Local governments face significant challenges in ensuring compliance for parks and recreation facilities due to limited resources, coordination issues, and data management complexities. The lack of accurate and timely compliance reporting can lead to legal repercussions, jeopardize public safety, and diminish community trust. In today's session, we'll explore how you can use GIS technology to meet regulatory standards in parks and recreation facilities. You'll learn how to apply GIS to conduct facility accessibility audits, to manage environmental compliance, and to optimize maintenance and asset management processes. The webinar will provide practical insights and strategies for integrating GIS with existing management systems, ensuring that parks and recreation areas are safe, accessible, and sustainable for all users. There are four main goals of this webinar, and they are to master GIS tools, optimize maintenance, enhance environmental compliance, and integrate with existing systems. Okay, I think probably enough time has gone by for the poll. And if so, the results should come up on the screen. I hope so in a second here. While I'm waiting for that to happen, actually, I'm going to look at some other things here.
The poll results should be on your screen. I can give you the summary if you'd like.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. This whole window disappeared on me, but I'm gonna make it come back now, I believe. Yes, I don't see the results on my screen here.
We have a question of the organization type, and 85%, 79% of the people are from local government. We have a few from state, federal, academia, industry, and other, but the bulk are definitely local government.
Okay.
Location, 99% of our attendees are from the United States and one from Africa. So hello, whoever's from Africa. Business sector, 32% from land, public administration, planning, 35% from public works and utilities, 7% from transportation, 3% from public information, and 22% from other. As far as the size of municipalities, pretty evenly distributed, 36% under 25,000, 20% 25,000 to 50,000 population, 18% 50,000 to 100,000 population, and then 26% over 100,000. So in terms of municipality sizes, it's really quite varied. That's it.
That's excellent. Thank you, Anne. So we have a really diverse audience, and not just, from around the world as well. That's great. Okay, with that, let's get started. So we have plenty of time for a question and answer portion at the end of the presentations. Now, to kick off the presentations, it is my great pleasure to start this webinar with a presentation by Jenna Leveille, Mapping the Way, Supporting Parks and Recreation Compliance Geospatially. Jenna is Vice President of State and Local Government Business Development at Sanborn Map Company and a personal friend. Jenna, take it away.
Thanks, Michael. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to be here. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared. I guess it's, there we go. Morning for most and afternoon for a few. I don't know what time it is in Africa, but welcome, and I'm glad you can all be here. So I'll just go ahead and jump in. Make sure all my tools are working. So this is what we're going to do today, at least for my short portion of this event. I'm going to give you a short welcome. We're going to talk a little bit about my company and who I work for. We're going to set the stage a little bit for the discussion. A very small bit on what is GIS, because I want everybody to be on the same page. What the compliance challenges for parks. What are our goals? How are we trying to meet the public where they're at? How GIS can help, and I'm going to offer some examples and some resources. So a little about me. Michael already introduced me and gave my title. I've been with Sanborn for almost 2 years now, and previously I was with state government. So the vast majority of my time in my career has been with government. I was previously the deputy state cartographer for the Arizona State Land Department. And my role there, I coordinated data for the state and ensured that we had the framework data sets available publicly, so that we could all do better work for GIS. It was a big job and one that I absolutely loved. So I have some perspective on the challenges that face municipalities and states with GIS coordination and solutions for the public. All right. I'm not going to do a super deep dive on Sanborn. You all can Google us and explore our website. One of the fun facts about Sanborn is that we are the oldest mapping company in the nation. We've been mapping since 1866. And I kind of like to think about the maps that we produced, or that Sanborn produced, that long ago. They were the fire and flood insurance maps. It's kind of like the first GIS, right? Trying to provide the representation of the real world with additional information and location intelligence. What's really cool is that these are all in the public sector. So they're hosted by the Library of Congress, and they're still used today. I still have conversations regularly about how people are using them, where, to get a picture of where things were at so long ago. So we've obviously evolved. Modern day Sanborn has grown into a full suite geospatial provider. In kind of the 70s, 80s, 90s, we were really known for imagery acquisition and LiDAR, and then we evolved. So beyond the data acquisition and the planimetrics, so those are the features that you can pull from imagery, we also started engaged in partnerships to sell more out-of-the-box solutions for imagery. We have a whole consulting side. About 3 years ago, we acquired a company called Applied Geographics, and they provide data visualizations and data analytics, and in some cases are the support behind a GIS. Behind a GIS department in some instances. We also have staff augmentation. We have a full geophysics group that maps subsurface, which is really intriguing to me. So if you want more information, please visit our website. So while I set the stage, I think this is a really good time for us to launch a poll. I kind of want to get an idea of your familiarity with GIS, what that looks like, what size is your team, because that definitely challenges the resources. So thank you for spending some time with that. And as I set the stage, I did some digging. I think it's really interesting to learn that, agencies across the US, there's approximately 8,000 park and recreation agencies across the US. That doesn't account for how many parks there are, but that's how many agencies there are. And almost half of those are rural. So we know that there are different unique challenges for rural entities. I thought that was a really interesting thing to look at. So parks are huge for economic activity within the U.S. They contribute over 200 billion as far as economic activities and jobs. 1.1 million jobs nationwide. That's a lot. I really loved the third bullet there, the great unifiers. I think parks are something we can all agree on, right? That fosters interaction in our communities, gives us a sense of place. I think that's something we can all meet there, which I think is really important, especially currently. So a couple of the other interesting things that I learned as I was preparing for this and as I've joined Sanborn was that really currently urban parks are being redesigned with green infrastructure in mind. So how can we better support our communities, right? How can they work as managing stormwater, reducing heat islands? And along with COVID, right, what we learned was that we're not all connected. So cities started a smart movement during that time and shortly thereafter, ways of including additional Wi-Fi hotspots for communities so that connectivity could happen where it wasn't. Smart lighting so that we can be more efficient in our use of resources, and interactive wayfinding. How do we know where we are and where we want to go? How can we do that better? So it's really interesting to see with the smart movement, the integration of IoT is done for parks. Let's see what the results of the poll are. Great. So the vast majority of you are familiar, at least, with GIS, so we don't have to go too deep there. It's good to know that some of you are less familiar, so we'll still go over some of that. Yeah, and I'm not surprised. The vast majority have very small GIS teams. That's good and that's bad, right? There are some limitations there. Thank you very much for answering the polls, and we'll keep on our journey. So I'm just going to quickly go into what is GIS, since there are some that are less familiar, right? So it's a system, a computer system, that's designed for capturing, storing, and analyzing and displaying data that's linked to a location on the Earth. What this allows us to do is capture geographic data. It's a representation in many instances, but depending on our technology, it can be very, very accurate. It allows us to analyze patterns and relationships. You can visualize different layers, so how things interact. That helps with our understanding of trends, and it helps with our decision making. I think all of us humans tend to be visual, right? We understand things better when we can see them. So this is really the part that I love, right? Why is GIS a game changer, right? Because location matters. So this is what I think of when I think of GIS and the power of GIS. We start with data, that foundational data. So that could be raw imagery acquisition. That could be a point cloud from a LiDAR acquisition. That could be parcels. That could be a lot of different things. So we start with that data, right? We need to know where we begin. And then we add context. So where is it in the world? That allows us to see that as information. That's the attributes that we associate with the different layers. And then we add meaning to it, right? Where is it in time? Where is it in a community? What does that mean? We can start then to analyze and interpret and find the patterns and relationships, which really is the knowledge, right? We can level set, know where we're at. And if we add insight, we look at those trends, we see what they mean, we provide context through our communications. Hopefully, we can come to actionable and informed decisions. That's the power of the GIS. It allows us to get there in a way that everybody's on the same page. So, so for me, this is one of the things that I think of when I think of parks, right? And the challenges that you all face. So this is true outside of parks as well, but particularly in your circumstances, there's limited resources. There's few people, technology is, it's all pretty contained. Funding is limited. Silos are common. Coordination within our agencies and outside, it's difficult, right? And there are competing priorities across divisions. People are working on different things. I think data deficiencies are one of the things that we all struggle with. There's outdated data, there's unavailable data, and system interoperability. We want things to function together. Those are all pretty common challenges that we can look at for parks, but we can also look at it broadly, right? One of my philosophies that probably not everybody agrees with is doing more with less is really not strategic or sustainable, right? That's very, very difficult. And although we are asked to do more often with less resources, I believe that our solution is to do more with more, right? So we leverage technology. We leverage people and data, coordination and collaboration, and we leverage external resources, things that we don't always know, right, are available to us. So I think leveraging our networks is really, really important. So I wanted to get a little more detailed in the solutions. And I see I'm already on the clock, so I'm gonna speed up a little bit. So what do I mean by leveraging technology? Well, GIS is one way, right? We want to integrate with existing systems. That in and of itself allows us to be more efficient in our activities, maximize the value of our investments. I really think that that's an important piece in being able to do more with more. So leveraging people and data internally, it's really important that you communicate across departments and that GIS is available across departments, that we can collaborate and leverage the resources that we have more efficiently. Externally within that, the partners, the local partners, state partners, and national coordination groups, those are all resources that can help us leverage data and people more efficiently and more effectively. And of course, we can't forget external resources. So associations, nonprofits, community foundations, your professional network. Often this is where you can find best practices, solutions that have worked for others that maybe you didn't think of. It's a really important resource that we can't overlook. Some of these organizations that I've listed here that have standards, best practices, free data, open data, I guess, authoritative and open data. All of these links are in your resources, so please feel free to explore further. I'm gonna talk more deeply about this as we continue on. So this is what I think of when I think about the compliance challenge for parks. What you're really trying to achieve, and as a community, what we're trying to achieve is public engagement and accessibility. We want to ensure that people can leverage and enjoy what they support through their tax dollars. Is it accessible? Do they know what's happening, right? We want to make sure that there's public safety involved and public safety awareness. So are there fire risks? Are there safety risks? Are the equipment current as far as their compliance with safety? So we don't have rundown playgrounds, that sort of thing, any kind of safety. Accountability and transparency, people want to know where their money is being spent and how it's being spent as a taxpayer. So we want to be able to share with folks. Obviously, asset inventory and management, GIS is a database. So it allows us to manage our resources more effectively. And environmental monitoring, so that can help us understand what's happening in our parks. So how much water is being used? Are there critters that need to be addressed? What is the environmental state, right? So how GIS can help, really, I think of it in these kind of 4 pillars: innovating, communicating, responding, and connecting. And how does that increase your return on investment? So integrating with existing asset management systems, it leads to increased overall value, right? And maximizing your investment. That helps to plan and manage and improve public spaces. Communicating, as I mentioned earlier, most people are visual. So data visualizations, custom interactive resources, that typically leads to increased engagement and accessibility. People get excited when they can find the information easily and understand what's happening in their community. So applications, dashboards, all of those things enable efficiencies. So responding, if there's an integration of real-time data so that we understand our situational awareness is provided, that can increase efficiencies and maximize expenditures. So are we investing in the right places with the right things? That tests that theory, right? So environmental monitoring, as I had mentioned before, that can provide insight into resource use, how much water is being used for plants, etc. It can also give insight into park health and or risk mitigation efforts. So connecting, that bridges communications and workflows across the silos. That's both within your agency and externally. There's efficiencies inherent in that communication and workflow coordination. There's greater impact. So GIS can be used for field data collection and tasking for workforce. Those are really important things. That creates efficiencies and allows us to do more with more. So I'm going to dive into a few examples and wrap up my section because I've been a little verbose. This particular example, and these links also are in the resources. MapGeo is a solution provided by Sanborn. It's often used to support small municipalities. Sometimes they have GIS people and sometimes they don't. So this is an example of just really common basic information sharing, right? We want to know where the parks are, what are they, where are the trails, and how do we find them? Where do they exist within our community? So this is an interactive website, something that I think most entities have, but I think it's still really important to share as far as a resource for communicating and providing efficiencies and doing more with more. Another example, this is it from Connecticut. This particular entity really believes in providing PDFs to the public, and that is something because they believe that printing them out, because some people don't just use their phones, right, is a good option for folks. What I wanted to point out here, beyond the basic information that we're trying to express and the community is sharing with the public, is they also have emergency trail markers on here. So that ties into the public safety. This allows folks that are struggling on a trail to be found and to get emergency services if that's needed. They also on this map show the pollinator pathways. So where are they going to see more pollen? Where are they going to have more interaction with nature? I think it's a really great and resourceful example. Again, this is more along the lines of asset management tool and how GIS works from that perspective. This particular interactive map is also a MapGeo product. From the image, this allows people, you can see this is the pool near this particular search, right? This person. So what does that look like in it? And it will lead to interactive links and websites to learn more information. But it has a parks near me feature, so we know what's close to us, what can we access, and a bike network theme. All of those things really increase the value of what parks are doing, right? And the services we're providing. I think we can't underestimate applications. I think most of us use our phones an awful lot. And this particular example is of a disc golf course. It's an application that is interactive. So it allows the player to not just understand the course and the topography around the course, but it also has a feature where they can understand what the slope is, where their where they're playing. So what is the increase in elevation to get to the next hole? And they can make then informed decisions, right? Although it also has pictures, and I think it's just a really cool interactive way to understand where you're at. So I spoke a little bit at the beginning about green stormwater infrastructure and what folks are doing. So the city of Tucson has a Storm to Shade website. And this is an initiative that the city has engaged in. They are looking at existing parks and how they can use capital investments that have already been committed to making the parks more of a green stormwater infrastructure resource. So what that means is helping with flooding. Can that be a place where, can that park in particular hold more wastewater or runoff, right, to protect the communities around it? This website in particular is really informative, and the GIS staff in Tucson, also a small team of one, supports the mapping application as well as the visualizations informing the public where their money is going, where they're at in projects, what the pictures look like, how they can be aware of these efforts in their community. It's worth checking out for sure. I wanted to point out that the Trust for Public Land does an assessment of parks across the U.S., and they give park scores. So Washington, D.C. is #1 on the Trust for Public Land park score. The reason that they are is that they've looked at equity and access and investment and amenities and acreage of parks for their population, and they have more and better access and better communication than a lot of other places. I think it's a good example of what a community is doing right. And you can see here, this is just an example of all the different apps and maps that they have available to the public. Another cool thing that DC is doing is they have an AI tool for residents to engage in that is contained within their open data system, but a resident can use natural language to ask it questions and have it make maps for them based on the open data that's there. It's definitely worth checking out, and hopefully is inspiration for some of you. This is the park serve and what is used for that score. So communities can leverage the analysis that has already been done, that is done through Trust for Public Lands, to inform their own citizens and to inform their own agencies on best practices and level set with where they're at and how do they prioritize. I'll let you all, since we're a little pressed for time, I'll let you all explore on your own, but you can see that there are demographics. There's a lot of information within this. And finally, I think knowing where resources are, data and mapping resource library from the National Recreation and Park Association. This is data that you don't have to create. You can leverage it to inform your citizens or to inform your administrations on decisions. It's really worthwhile. It's actionable data and something to be aware of. So I know I raced through the last bit, but I just want to say thank you. And I'll invite my colleague, Nick Smolowski, to the stage so he can take it from here. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Jenna. That was awesome. Wow, yeah. I don't know how to, that's a tough act to follow up. So I guess I should just go ahead and start. Let me share my screen here. Jenna and I go back a number of years, and she did a wonderful job setting the stage. And more than that, I absolutely am going to steal her line, more with more. I wrote that down. That was great. So today, full disclosure at the beginning, Michael Dennis, Dr. Dennis mentioned that Bad Elf was one of the sponsors. And so full disclosure, you will see a little bit of Bad Elf's GPS or GNSS pictures and gear in this presentation. But you can take what we're going to be talking about over the next 10-15 minutes, and you can really apply this to most GPS or global positioning systems on the market. Just do your due diligence when you're out there looking for a device to do some field mapping. So we're going to be talking about how these new types of field data are what I call a geospatial force multiplier. Quick introduction to who Bad Elf is. We're going to have a quick solutions poll in here just a minute. I'm going to continue with some quick facts following Jenna on why we love parks to continue to get you hyped on why GIS and GPS and these types of geospatial technologies really can transform your organizations. We'll talk quickly about this crazy new data-driven world we live in, which effectively Jenna just showed you all these different web apps and applications on the internet that are data-driven, that are making helping you make informed decisions. And then we'll round it off with the Bad Elf bring your own device approach to field data collection and some quick next steps. So if you've not heard of Bad Elf, we do not sell skateboards, even though I wish we did. We've been around for a little over 15 years. Our headquarters is in West Hartford, Connecticut. I did notice that one of the apps or locations that MapGeo was showing with Jenna was in Connecticut. I'm out of our office in Boerne, Texas, effectively San Antonio, and we have our fulfillment labs and support center and R&D in Scottsdale, Arizona, with a programming center and some sales in some other various states. We have been creating global positioning devices or devices to map things in the field for a lot of time now. We are agnostic. We work with iOS, Android, Windows, and what you'll see is we work with a plethora of apps to do the type of work you need to do specific to, say, parks and recreation. So why do we love parks? I'm going to throw out a couple more fun facts. How about reduction in healthcare costs? So a study published in the Journal of Environmental Management found that increasing the population of green spaces in cities could reduce healthcare costs significantly. More specifically, a 10% increase in green space was associated with an average healthcare savings of $3.8 million annually for a city with a population of about 250,000 people. So 10% more green space, 3.8 million in savings with a city of around 250,000. How about enhanced physical activity for the inhabitants of this area? Research by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, indicates that people who live closer to parks are 47% more likely to meet recommended levels of physical activity compared to those who do not have easy access to green spaces. Fun fact, the average person won't walk more than about a quarter of a mile to get most places, certainly not 2 miles. So proximity to parks is really important, and GIS is a great tool to figure out those types of proximities, leaning on Tobler's law of geography, things that are closer or more related. So I guess if you're closer to a park, that means you're more related to it and what benefits are. And then last but not least, improvement in mental health. Okay, so the World Health Organization, WHO, says access to green spaces is associated with a 20% reduction in the risk of mental health issues such as depression and anxiety. We live in a world now where we have more mental health issues across the board than we ever had, and you just need to get a little bit more green space out there, and you can affect people's actual mental state of being. I mentioned we're going to talk a little bit about data. We live in this world, I call it the geospatial moment. There's just more location-based data, more big data, more analytical data, more free data, more remote sensing data, satellite data, cell phone data, census data. There's just more data than we've ever had. And so we live in this moment where every decision really, from traffic lights to tree planting, relies on locational intelligence. At this point in the game, not using location intelligence is really going to be a deficit for your organization. Building on that, high accuracy GNSS data or field data fuels this engine. It's the backbone. It's the cornerstone of all of this databases of data, right? It ensures smart cities, utilities, and parks run on precise, trusted information. A data-driven world means we measure, map, and manage with insight, not instinct, right? So it's just not like licking your finger and putting your finger up in the air and saying, which way is the wind going? Instead, we can attach a wind gauge with a GPS, and we can get precise information from a weather station. Geospatial data connects people, places, and systems, enabling smarter, more resilient communities. With accurate spatial insight, Parks and Recs team can plan trails, maintain assets, and serve the public better than ever before. And remember, the better we serve the public, the better the mental health, the better the physical activity, and the less money a city will spend on its people, or have to spend on its people. So how does Bad Elf fit into this? I mentioned that we're a global positioning device. You can see in the gentleman's hand here, that's one of our GPSs attached to a cell phone. We call this the BYOD approach, the bring your own device. So you bring your cell phone with LTE, you bring a Bad Elf GPS, you bring a low-cost RTK network, we'll talk about that in a second, your mapping app of choice, and boom, you are able to go collect super high fidelity, high accuracy data that your park and your city and your constituents deserve. So GPS, Global Positioning Systems, or GNSS is kind of the new archetypal term. GNSS, Global Navigation Satellite Systems, actually refers to multiple constellations of satellites, whether it's GPS, which is technically the United States, GLONASS, which is the Russian Federation, Galileo, which is the European Union, or Beidou, which is from China. So what I'm trying to get across here is these positioning systems are all over the place. There's tons of satellites out there right now, and all these devices are now are able to tap into this. We can now also get high accuracy on these devices through real-time kinematic corrections, or RTK. Absolutely don't have enough time to get into most of that, but RTK is a terrestrial correction source that we provide through the internet to your GPS that gives you, say, from 1 meter of accuracy, you're down to sub-inch or centimeters. A lot of this is premised on the backbone of this autonomous vehicle or AV market, this AV revolution. You can't have cars and things drive itself if they don't have precise locations. I mentioned RTK. Anybody that's been around for a while knows that RTKs has had a kind of crazy evolution. 10 years ago, RTK networks were really expensive. They were sparse. You didn't find them all over. Well, now they're everywhere. And so much so, you can see this is a picture of my house in Texas where my wife was super impressed that I installed a GPS on top of our roof. Well, you can do this now for next to nothing. And there are third-party systems like Geodetic out there that have something like 25,000 stations worldwide. Or the speaker next, Marcus Mueller, you're going to see when he talks that in Europe, he's a special guest from Germany, all throughout Europe, RTK networks are standard in every country. They're just there. So what has Bad Elf got? We've got really two GPS devices. This is the Bad Elf Flex. If you need higher accuracy and a little bit more versatility, this is the one you want to go with. You can attach it to rangefinders. Maybe you need to collect the heights of trees. You can attach it to scanning software or radios if you're out off grid. This is our other GPS, the Mini. This is going to be more affordable and smaller, a little less accuracy, but fits in the palm of your hand. You can fire up, like I said, a scanning app, use this GPS, and you basically need to just pick the right tool for the right trade, no matter the GPS you might be looking at. And again, these devices are providing that X, Y, and Z, the latitude, longitude, and elevational values, okay? So then, once you provide that high accuracy with RTK, it's time for you, the user, to pick the app of choice. You don't have to stick in an ecosystem anymore. So if you want to do laser scanning and photogrammetry and augmented reality, Pix4D is for you. If you want to do more utility mapping in your park, PointMan by ProStar is for you. This is also a great app, for an example, that you can detect or integrate utility locators. So if you are looking for underground utilities, this might be something good for you. Or I'm assuming a lot of the people out there are using Esri. So Bad Elf, we're a gold partner. You can see we've got a bunch of the badges up there, also a GIS CI endorsing company. But you can fire up your field maps and go collect data, and you can see in the palm of your hand, you're getting centimeters for a fraction of the price, $1,500. The other thing is there's lots of software out there right now, like iTree. This is created by the USDA and other companies like Davy. And you can come in here and supply the GNSS data that you used and collected, rather, with Bad Elf, and then you can pump it into systems like this, and you can get so many actionable insights into your park, your city, you name it. So what are the next steps? Let's wrap up. First, you need to ask your organization, how are you currently organizing the parks and recreation data? Are you using paper systems, GIS systems? Maybe you're using CAD systems. Or do you have a full-on asset management system like CityWorks? Are you actually currently collecting park field data manually or digitally? Did you hire a contractor to do it? What would be your final goals for the public space? So having some foresight and predictive nature into what you want this area to be. Then it's as simple as go get a low-cost GPS unit, pick that free or affordable RTK network that's everywhere now, pick that best mapping app for your job. Maybe it's something simple and free, or maybe it's something robust like Esri, and then go map. That's it. Go collect data, export these data into your systems of choice, and you're off to the races. The learning curve has come way, way down. I mean, if you can play Pokemon Go, you can go collect data as well as Pokemon. So it's, so easy. Even an arborist like me can do it. That's my bad tree joke. All right, thank you so much. So that's what I have got. I am going to introduce Marcus Mueller, if you'd like to come up. Marcus is a good friend of mine from Bavaria, Germany. Marcus is a Bad Elf user and works for the LWF, a forestry department in that area. Without further ado, Marcus, it is all you, my friend. You can share your screen and I will go backstage.
So, hello everyone. My name is Markus Müller. I work for the Bavarian Forest Administration. I worked 13 years as a district forester. And now my main focus is on requirements management at the interface between local forest offices, GIS developers, and the use of GNSS technology inside the Bavarian State Institute of Forestry. The State Institute of Forestry, called the LWF, provides research, monitoring, and advisory services for both forest experts and forest owners. And we, as part of the LWF, support and continuously develop BIVIS, which is the official GIS of the Bavarian Forest Administration. So talking about forests, you all might remember the opening scene of Gladiator. So let's see what the Romans said about Germania 2000 years ago. They said, it's a land rugged with formidable forests or foul with rank marshes. So looks like the perfect place to not develop any humor, but with all seriousness, what the Romans captured right and important thing is this landscape was and is defined by forests. Only today we consider them a vital, well-managed natural resource. So let's have a look on this resource in Europe. This is the forest area in Europe, and you see clearly Sweden is leading with 30 billion hectares, 30 million hectares of forests, followed by Spain, Finland, France, and only fifth, there's Germany. So we should look on stocks, because in forestry also stocks count. So Sweden again leading. So it's on purpose that Germany is missing in this chart. So I want to run a poll and have you estimate how much Germany has. What I already can give away is that Bavaria alone has an annual growth of 29 million cubic meters of wood, like that's 1 cubic meter you see there, and an annual harvest of approximately 28 million cubic meters. So that means our stock is still growing. We use less than grows in the forest naturally. Let's have a look on Bavaria. I know you all know your geography, but just to make sure we're all on the same map, Bavaria is the largest state in the south of Germany. So 20% of Germany is Bavaria, bordering with Czech Republic and Austria. And 37% of the state's area are forests. So you can see the dark green is state-owned forest and the light green is all forests. As you can see, the state-owned forest is concentrated in the south and on the Bohemian border in the east and in the Franconian forests in the north. And the rest is private forests. So do we already have the results of our poll? So you very smart people. 42%, most people were thinking it has more than 3,000 million cubic meters. So let's have a look at the chart. And you are right, Germany is leading in timber stock. And even Bavaria has more timber stock than, for example, the United Kingdom, which is before Slovakia. It's written in German, Vereinigtes Königreich. So this reflects our favorable growing conditions and efficient forest management. So even Germany may not have the largest forest area, it clearly leads in timber volume. So that almost sounds like a paradise for forestry here, but of course we have some challenges. Let's have a look at the forest ownership structure in Bavaria. So you can see the yellow is state-owned forest, so Bavarian forest. 2% is federal, which is mainly military training grounds, and 12% is municipal forests, which is villages, cities mainly. So more than half, 56%, are privately owned. So why is that a challenge? It is a challenge if we look at the distribution. So 56% are distributed among around 7,000 forest owners. And the approximate size of property size is 2 hectares. And 70% of the owners have even less than 2 hectares. So let's have a look on an aerial image of a forest in Bavaria to see the challenges. You can see in the left corner that's 70 meters. So you can already guess the parcels which are highlighted in orange. Some of these parcels in the north of the picture are several hundred meters long and just 10 meters wide. So planning, harvesting is really very, very hard. And even finding out who's the owner. So that's where GNSS already comes into play. If you don't find some of these boundary stones, or even if you find them, you need GNSS to just to know who the owner is. What's other challenges? Insects, for example, the bark beetle. After World War II, the main species which was planted, tree species, was spruce. It was planted because it grows fast and it has good timber. But the problem is with warmer climate nowadays, the bark beetle also profits from this climate, and you have to remove the trees very quickly before the young beetles emerge. So that's where you have to know who's the owner. GNSS again. Another challenge, for example, is weather extremes. So spruce was planted everywhere, even in wet soil, for example. It grows fast there, but it's not stable. So very often it's first you get the storm and then you get the beetle. So again, you have to know where you're at. You need GIS and GNSS. So why do we even care about it? Why do we care about it? We, of course, care about it because there's several important forest functions in Bavaria. So we have the protective function. Imagine even the Alps in Bavaria is a quite densely populated area compared to, for example, the Rocky Mountains. So the protective function is very important against rockfall, avalanches, flooding. Another very important function is the economic function in rural areas, like wood for firewood, for energy, for timber, or you see in the bottom for veneer, like for furniture production. And what Nick already said, recreation is a very important part of the functions of forests. In Bavaria, it's even in the constitution, everybody can enter every forest. So we don't have any signs, no trespassing. You're allowed to enter every private forest in Bavaria. And last but not least, nature conservation. So forests are habitats for rare species, birds, insects, fungi, and so on. So because of all these functions, which are very important for society, Bavaria has 340 forest or district foresters who do free consulting of private forest owners and even financial funding. So what are some funding programs? A very common funding program is reforestation. So after the bark beetle, you need to plant again, maybe some more stable species like fir, like beech, and so on. Then another program is tending of young stands. So young forests need care against, you have to remove weeds, you have to remove unwanted tree species, which could outgrow the wanted tree species. And very special programs in some regions like soil-friendly timber hauling with horses. And again, like for nature conservation, keeping deadwood and habitat trees. You can't prohibit to a private forest owner to take out his tree. So state gives him money to let the tree there for the species. So we digitalized, this year we digitalized all our paper application programs, our financial funding. It's all digital now in our GIS, which is called ByVis. And I just want to show you how it works. Nowadays, don't think it's magic. Look, that's Theresienwiese, which is actually Oktoberfest grounds. So imagine you want to do a reforestation. You see all the boundaries there. You see the tents. So we want to plant some trees, some forest for all the party goers to sleep in the shade. Of course, this is just for demonstration purposes. In real life, this would not be eligible. So you can choose the area, and then automatically there's an input of the owner data, which is City of Munich here. And then we can go on to tell the GIS we want to do a reforestation and start measuring with GNSS. to get a nice little shape, or with some happy little trees, like Bob Ross would have said it maybe. And automatically you can choose which parcel should be involved. So there's already a lot. Sometimes you catch the parcel of a neighbor you don't want in the financial funding program. So you can choose that here. And then you can check with other layers, other data like agricultural, which is not eligible in this funding program, or if there's a nature protection zone, which may lead to higher funding. So you can check all this in our GIS, and all just to go from these types of forests to a more mixed, stable, stable against storms, stable against insects, against climate change, more stable, resistant, mixed forests like these. I want to close with a quote of the writer Franz Kafka. There are things in the forest one could ponder for years, lying among the moss. But when we're at work, technology is still our trusted companion. So thanks for listening. And now I'm very excited to hear from the next speaker, Bryce Bullock from Samsara.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate that introduction. My name is Bryce Bullock. I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing my screen here. If I can grab that for me, Marcus. Awesome. So yeah, my name is Bryce Bullock. I'm excited to be here with you all this morning. I am a representative from Samsara, and I work with our public sector organization. Was very excited to do this. I have a background in government starting from the early days. I worked for the City of Boulder Parks and Rec Department during the summers in high school and college. So spent a lot of time mowing the lawns there and making everything look nice on softball and soccer fields. From there, out of college, I started working with public sector groups from the GovTech side of things. I worked in the permit and licensing space. That's where I got introduced to GIS and shapefiles, business licenses, and all the fun regulation side of that. And now I'm at Samsara. Samsara is an Internet of Things company. We serve the world of physical operations. So what does that mean? That essentially is anything that is out in the world, whether it be trucks, pieces of equipment, protecting people, lots of different ways that we do that. So just starting with a quick introduction on us. A lot of times we'll work with governments who bring us in and say, we want to improve the safety of our operation, the efficiency, how well our equipment is operating. Maybe we want to be more sustainable, more fiscally responsible. We want to connect all of the technology that we have in place today and work with our fantastic GIS teams to make sure that these insights that they have from their pieces of equipment are being used in a really valuable way. The modern Parks and Rec agency today has a super complex job. They're one of the most dynamic organizations in a local government operation. They're essential, and they're dealing with a lot of these different things that we're seeing day to day: aging infrastructure, protecting their staff, public safety, sustainability, just making sure that an operation's running smoothly. And so we love coming into play with these kind of things, connecting to certain pieces of equipment and figuring out how we can make these things flow as smooth as possible. A lot of the big things we see in terms of asset management specifically are tracking fuel, figuring out how we can have an overall savings on fuel, setting up preventative maintenance programs, but also knowing what actually is wrong with our assets and our equipment. When we have field crews that are out servicing a park, making sure that the vehicles that they need are operating smoothly, and also preventing theft and loss of equipment that we have out in the field as well. Things like tractors, mowers, backhoes, skid steers, even just your smaller toolboxes can occasionally go missing and end up costing money. So if you see in that picture there, one of our small, almost Kit Kat sized asset trackers is attached on this piece of equipment just to make sure that operation continues to run smoothly. I talked about aging infrastructure a little bit. Figuring out utilization and engine hours is a big core to this as well. Figuring out how equipment's being used and how it can be used at its best. Talked about GPS rather a little bit earlier. For our actual GPS devices that connect into vehicles, there's SIM cards on each of those. They're pinging twice every second. So it's super real time in terms of actually seeing where your equipment and vehicles are at, and again, how they're operating more smoothly. Talked about maintenance a second ago. I think the biggest thing here is, a lot of times we'll do this on our personal vehicle when we're driving. We'll see a code pop up, immediately just, throw it out the review and not think about it for a few months. Maybe even just learning what it is something that requires us to dig into our operator's manual and figure out what's happening. Samsara has a really unique way of actually pulling this information, figuring out what's wrong with certain things, and again, making sure the vehicles that are out at these parks and at these sites are operating as smooth and as effective as possible. So as we start to get into the mapping piece and GIS piece here, just wanted to lead with a statistic that a lot of times when these assets are poorly tracked, it ends up costing a lot of money. Like I said, that toolbox that just happens to go missing, maybe that's taking away from actual operating hours. It's taking away from the day-to-day of a group. Then you're going to have to go out and buy a new one, and there's costs that are included there. So overall, the goals that we see with a lot of the public sector organizations that we work with are they want to reduce the downtime that they have and the disruption to their operations, mitigate things being lost, and simplifying the actual inventory side of things, and making sure that they know precisely where their stuff's at. Talked a little bit about utilization reporting. So as these sites are being operated on, just knowing how often equipment's being used, what it's being used for, if it's being overworked, and when maybe it is due to be replaced. All really important things that might be difficult to track on a spreadsheet or a piece of paper that we like to go ahead and just give you more activation into. All right, so now we're talking about the actual Esri and GIS side of the equation. The way that I like to look at this nowadays is these two areas, both Samsara and your actual vehicle data, as well as Esri and your map data, need to be interconnected. With a standard GIS system, a lot of times you'll have a clean, static system of record. Then you have your operation, chaotic, dynamic, real time. Somebody can get hurt or injured and it can change. How can we make this as safe and as well oiled as possible? See, we got a question here in the chat. Oh, looks like that was just to me. Sorry, just a quick note on that. Let's talk about how some customers are actually doing this today, and then I'll show everybody how it works quickly. So we work with the city of Atlanta. They came to us with a really neat problem on their airports. A lot of times tying back the actual map to the data and the regulation becomes a fun thing to work on and becomes an interesting thing to work on because you hear about certain challenges. Airports have regulations where grass has to be cut to a certain length. If it's not, birds go on the grass quite a bit and can cause a huge safety issue. So this is regulated pretty heavily. They wanted to figure out how they could actually start looking at this in a more effective way. They wanted to make sure that the grass was constantly cut and sort of be at the cutting edge of an issue like this. Again, connected some of our gateways to their vehicles, to their mowers. They saw when the blades were now engaged, and then they could track this all through a GIS map to see how often this was done. So thanks all just for going through that. I did want to show a quick rundown on how the system works here. So what we're looking at is the Samsara system of the city and county of Denver. This is all live information. They've given us permission to show this and reference it with customers. So again, these are folks that are out on the road working right now. getting their day job done. And we're going to take a look at what their operation looks like. So we can see it looks like they have almost 2,000 assets that are out on the road. Things like mowers, tractors, vehicles, and all their staff are tracked in this system. With this map, we can automatically overlay live traffic, live weather. We can look at idling events on the vehicles to see which ones maybe are just sitting still for longer. So if we click into a vehicle that's moving right now, maybe let's click into this one. Unit BB144. We can see that Joseph Depari is driving it right now. We can see exactly where this vehicle has stopped at and what its routes look like over the course of today. And we can even click into it in real time. So we can see that Joseph's driving 25 miles an hour right now. He's going down West Mississippi Avenue. We can see a snapshot of exactly what his dash camera on the vehicle sees. And we can update that and get a new look at it as well. All the diagnostics of the vehicle are tracked right here. So we can see how many engine hours are on Joseph's truck, what the fuel level and DEF level is. And again, we can look back at his history here as well. So backing out of that, we have a ton of these side tabs here with different areas. You can look into the operation a little bit further. I'll go through a few of these, but maintenance status is one of my favorite ones. I mentioned, on my personal vehicle, fault code will pop up, and a lot of times I'll just not think twice about it. Here you can click into the tab and see all the vehicles that you have on the road right now and how they're looking operationally. We can see, looks like on this vehicle, it has a couple different fault codes. If I click into that fault code, we can automatically diagnose it, some risks with keeping it out on the road, and some actions for how to go about fixing it. In the age of AI, you can start to ask actual questions about your vehicle specifically, and again, what steps might be needed to resolve something like this. So quick question and answer. Maybe I need to do a quick inspection of the air intake system, and I can make sure that this vehicle is out at the park and operational. I talked a little bit about safety at the start of it. Safety is really core to what we do. Not only do we have these gateways tracking where the vehicles are at and what's happening, but our cameras are actually tracking what's happening inside the vehicles, trying to make sure folks are as safe as possible on the road, figuring out how we can lower mobile usage rates, make sure that seatbelts are on, and for documentation risk purposes, if there are accidents at your parks or at your sites, you have videos of what takes place. The utilization report, we talked a little bit about these in the slides, but just figuring out how different items in the asset inventory are used and how they're being potentially overworked in certain instances. We can see that this vehicle, BB110, has been used 64% of its utilization for the last month. We're not halfway through the month yet, so might be a little bit overworked right now. Definitely something just to keep a good eye on. We would hate for the vehicle to be November 30th, at a job site needing to get some work done and break down. So let's give some good tracking of that here. Last thing I wanted to look at is just the fuel and energy hub. A lot of times groups will come to us and say, we want to try and save 10% on our fuel and overall maintenance costs. So we have a really good dashboard where you can look at this. You can see what the actual cost of idling is, and you can see some of these longer idling events. So it looks like Denver specifically is idling 27% of the time, which is actually not too bad. You can see just how often the vehicles would be on. You can sort by the idling duration. Our goal is to make sure that we're setting up proactive alerts so that these idling instances where a vehicle's on for 4 hours and 50 minutes can maybe be something more like an hour. Over the entirety of a year and the scale of the fleet that they have, that's something that could cut down on a ton of costs. So just to finish off here, wanted to show an actual mapping usage and how this does connect to ArcGIS. This is the city of Syracuse's snowplow website. So they have our devices on their snowplow vehicles anytime the plows are engaged, similar to that airport grass cutting use case that I mentioned. You're able to actually see how long it's been since a road has been plowed. I guess nice for the webinar's sake that snow is actually out now. I'm not sure if we would have had this website up a couple weeks ago. But since we've seen snow the last few days, you can see which streets have been plowed, how long ago they were plowed. You can really easily type in your address and see exactly how long it's been, and have just a better overall sense of what that looks like. So like I said earlier, really appreciate everybody showing up today and learning a little bit more. This is my contact info here. Feel free to take a quick snapshot. Reach out through our website if you'd like, samsara.com. Excited to just learn a little bit more about everyone's operations and how we can try and make things as good as possible. So to close here, I'm going to welcome back the other panelists to the stage, and happy to start answering some questions.
All right. Thank you, Bryce, and thank you, everyone, for your presentations. We're now in the discussion part, the question and answer part of this session. But before we do that, let's start off with a poll. Nick, I think you have a poll that people might want to.
Yeah.
I saw it pop up. Perfect.
There it is. You thought that we were going to be getting asked questions, but in fact, we're going to ask you guys questions one more time. And so there it is. So number one, do you currently implement a GIS solution for Parks and Rec compliance? Are you interested in implementing a GIS solution for your Parks and Rec? If you do have a GIS solutions for Park and Rec compliance, are you interested in speaking with a geospatial enablement specialist to see if you're maximizing your solution? Sort of like Bryce just mentioned, everybody here is always welcome to consult with you to help you out. And then, do you need a high accuracy GPS to collect field assets? So, thank you, Michael, for teeing that solutions poll up. We'll come back to that in a second. And I can start. I can answer a question that came in just to get us going, and then I'll hand it back to you, Michael. One of the questions asked about, can GIS specifically help with reserve studies? And so I can answer that. In a previous life, I used to do native plant inventory. So one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of municipalities and different state and local government jurisdictions actually have ordinances now where you have to do certain types of plant inventories. You can't just chop plants out and you have to replace them. And along with that, reserve studies are often done in parks. And so I used to do this kind of mapping quite a bit. And for those of you that don't know, a reserve study would be like knowing and understanding every single asset you have at that park. And let's say a hurricane, God forbid, came through and wiped it all out. What would that replacement value be? What would you need to have on reserve, let's say, to replace that? And then that can go into an insurance conversation on how you're going to insure the park. And so you would want to know every bench and every tree and every asset from, water fountains to the bathrooms and such like that. So yes, GIS is a great way to help store and collect the data that would be required to create a reserve study. So if you want, we'll go ahead and read off the poll answers or the solutions poll answers, and then I will hand it back. Okay. So, do you currently implement a GIS solution? 45% no, 37% yes. So, hey, not to be cheesy and make a parks joke, but that's pretty greenfield. That's a lot of opportunity there for people to do more with more in GIS. Are you interested in implementing a GIS solution? 15% roughly say yes, we are. About 40% maybe. About 20% no. And about 25%, give or take, already implementing. Let's see here. Do you have a GIS solution for GIS park compliance? Are you interested in talking with somebody? A few of you guys said yes. So we'll be certainly reaching out after the event to make sure you're covered. And then, do you need a GPS to collect data in the field? Around 30% said yes, about 45% no, and about 25% said not applicable. Back to you, Mike.
All right. Thank you for that, Nick. And thanks, everyone, for completing that poll. Right now, let's see. I'm going to start reading off some questions that are coming in. First one is for Marcus. How do you guide visitors to stay on the trails and to avoid destroying delicate habitat, Marcus, for conservation purposes?
Okay. Most of the forests in Bavaria are not parks. we have two national parks, which is the Bavarian Forest, it's called. It's next to the Bohemian border to Czech Republic. And we have one alpine national park, which is close to Salzburg. But in normal forests, there is no mandatory trails. You can enter wherever you want, except there's a nature conservation zone. So there might be signs, or there might be volunteer rangers, but actually it's not enforced very strictly in the forests. Sometimes the best is to not let people know that there's a rare species, like the black stork, for example. And in national parks, there's professional rangers, so you might get a fine. But anyway, in national parks, people stay to the mainly stay to the well-maintained trails. So that's basically it.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Marcus. The next one is clearly for you, Nick, and I'm sensitive to it because I'm actually a surveyor. So let me read it. You mentioned survey grade when talking about the Bad Elf GNSS receivers. How do these compare to survey systems from companies like Topcon and Trimble that surveyors use to perform actual surveys? They said that, not me.
I just envisioned quotes. I heard quotes, air quotes in the air. No, it's a great question. And, we're not Bad Elf. I mean, again, I mentioned I started with skateboards. We're a 15-year-old company. We're not one of, say, the big three, the Topcon, Leica, and Trimbles of the world. But there's this concept in technology, the democratizing of tech, right? And so we call it the democratization of GPS. So for the last 10 years, the product has become commoditized. There's 5 or 6 companies around the world that make manufacturing boards, and then everybody else uses them or knocks them off. And so really it's what you wrap around it. What am I getting at? No longer do you need to buy that $20,000, $30,000, even $50,000 system that kind of lives in an ecosystem. That's why that BYOD approach has come around, because pricing has been commoditized. And so to get RTK accuracy or survey grade accuracy, and so for anybody out there that's scratching their head and they're saying survey grade, Michael mentioned that was kind of, as a geodesist, he cares about that. And there's a lot of ways to define survey or engineering grade, right? But for lack of a better description, a surveyor may say 0.2 of a foot vertical. And that's in decimal feet, which most GIS people will not understand. But for lay people, maybe it's 2 centimeters or better, or a centimeter or better of horizontal accuracy. The idea is that your absolute accuracy and the repeatability or the precision of the device is high enough that it's confidently collecting that high accuracy data. So at the end of the day, there are a lot of alternative GNSS brands out there. Bad Elf happens to be one of them. And what I would do is I would challenge you to go try it out in your backyard, and any given Sunday, I think you'll see that highly commoditized affordable unit is going to do just as well or better than that highly expensive unit. And it's just the product of where we are. 25 years ago, I remember my dad bought a cell phone that was the size of a suitcase that clicked into our Astro van. Sorry, 30 years ago, right? And it was bukus of money. Now everybody has one of these, right? Every single person, we've commoditized it. So very long answer, but yes. And the data represents itself, so speaks for itself. You got to test it out, put the money where the mouth is. Go do some good benchmark testing. Just be careful, make sure that benchmark is modernized. But yes, I don't know, Michael, if you want to add in anything there. I know you're around, the survey community quite a bit.
Yeah, I am. I don't want to add too much. I like what you said. I think, and I liked how you ended it because there's 2 components to it. There's the technology, the device itself. As you said, they don't really vary that much because their guts are kind of the same. The thing that varies a lot, though, is how do you use it? We got to distinguish between precision and accuracy. Use the word accuracy a lot, but to know that something is actually accurate, you have to know it's accurate with respect to something. And for me, coming from NGS, that's the National Spatial Reference System itself. So that thing you said about checking into, shall I say, benchmarks should be part of your workflow. Don't just assume that the device is giving you the coordinate in the coordinate system that you think it is. You must verify, or trust but verify is probably the takeaway on that. All right. So I do have another question for Marcus. It's from Jordan. says, I keep coming back to the image you shared of the long, narrow parcels. What are the economics of aggregating all those different strips to put together an economical harvest?
Okay, very good question. Sometimes it's hard to do it economical, but there is private forest owners associations which are voluntary, but you can take part, and they do the harvesting. The easiest, of course, would be to consider your parcel like a share, but that actually doesn't work. Sometimes where it's hard with people. It's their forest. The grandfather planted the tree, and they want to know exactly what happens to their tree. And some of them who are still farmers have a tractor themselves, have a chainsaw, do it themselves, and just put it on the forest road, and the truck comes and brings it to the sawmill with the private forest owners associations in most of the times.
Well, thank you. I don't see any questions in here right now, but I think some of our speakers could probably come up with some. I actually see some ideas because I can see things that other people can't, that the audience can't see. So anyway, sorry, something came up on a question screen. Before I get into that, though, this looks like it's there's some things that Nick has brought up. I don't know if you want to speak to those right around, Nick, or maybe before we do that, Nick, you've already spoken some. Marcus had a couple questions. I don't know, Jenna and Bryce, is there anything you'd like to say that maybe you forgot to say during your presentation, or you think that might be pertinent to what's the kind of discussions we're having so far?
Yeah, I can jump in here. I think the question that Doris was asking earlier, just around, is this all visual and does not include audio? I wasn't sure specifically if you were referring to the dash camera side of Samsara. I wasn't sure if that was the exact question, but I'll answer it just in case. So we do have our own dash cameras. There is privacy built into them, and the department heads or administrators have the option to turn audio on and off. So I guess it is visual with audio. You do have that option to tailor it to how you would. The other question that Nick had, just around the pros and cons of doing this in-house or hiring a consulting firm to help. I think the answer on our end is it just typically depends on the agency, the way that they do things. And then from our end, what their current subset of vehicles and equipment is. That example that we looked at for Syracuse, they have a ton of equipment. They have a ton of snowplows. They wanted to utilize some of the really effective maps that their GIS team had built and essentially connect those two operations. I think if you do have both of these two areas that are built out pretty well, there's some really neat things that we can do, but I think it just depends on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I would agree. I think resources are different depending on the shop, and expertise is different, right? Depending on where you're located, what resources are available within an organization. Maybe there is no GIS shop. Maybe they don't have that expertise, or their community is kind of underserved as far as that expertise goes. So I think in those instances, consulting is a really good option, and a cost-effective option. I think it really depends on circumstances and what an organization has. I think if folks are unsure, or if they have not implemented a GIS, there are ways to see if it is economically feasible. You can do studies, you can do strategic planning. There's a lot of things that you can look at to see whether that's going to be a viable mechanism if you want to build it in-house or hire outside.
I guess I've got one more quick question, Michael, if we got time.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just throw it out to everybody. Any thoughts for the people? There are lots of different types of data out there. any differences, pros and cons of aerial type data acquisition and using aerial data, say from fixed wing planes or drones even, to do mapping and park compliance, say versus terrestrial mapping, maybe from a car or a GPS or a laser scanner. I don't know. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
So,
oh, go ahead, Jenna.
Yeah, no problem. I was going to add. So in preparing for this and in my previous role, I had a lot of interaction with parks GIS people. One of the things that they have always talked about as one of the most important pieces of their GIS is orthoimagery, which is the top down, so that they can get an idea of what is and where is it and what state is it in. I think once you understand the ortho image and how things relate, then terrestrial LiDAR, drones can be additional assets, right? They can help you really investigate the health or the current status of a particular event. I think aerial imagery is one of those base foundational data sets that is essential for any decision making, but it also is a pretty heavy lift. Unless an entity borrows it from a state organization or uses, the free resources from the feds. But still, that planning for an ortho image, it takes time, right? It's not as quick as terrestrial or drones, but all are important.
I think, yeah, all super good ideas there, Jenna, and it got the wheels turning for me a little bit. When we look at data, specifically with the public sector agencies we work with, the areas that we focus on most are where's the regulation at and what's most critical. From those two sides of things, we do a lot of work with emergency and floodplain and stormwater management, making sure that if there is an emergency event that happens, how well equipped are you to use your equipment and respond effectively? And then the other is the regulation side of things, making sure that, if there's requirements in place around, a lot of times we'll see things like generator reporting. Your generators will have to make sure that they run every week and make sure that they're feasible if an emergency does arise. Being able to just take those two pieces of data and make sure that they're in a really effective place is something we do quite a bit.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for that. I don't know if you planned that, Bryce, but it's exactly 30 after the hour. So this is right at our scheduled end time. Now we could go on. Apparently people could stay on a little bit longer if they want. I don't see any more open questions. I think maybe the thing to do now is go ahead and wrap up the seminar. I want to remind people, and others can remind me that I say about what to say to close this out, but that this has been recorded and it will be available. So you can always download and view it again. You can share it with others so they can view it as well. Heck, I think that's about it. Unless anyone has any last parting words, maybe we should say this is it.
I think just thank you. I appreciate everyone's attendance and being here today. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, everyone. It's wonderful.
Everybody,
and thank you
have
for
a good
the
rest of your
attendees.
week.